warmth and kindness, which you have in abundance. And so would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself, Agnes?
Thank you, Paula, and thanks everyone. It's great to have this chat. I think it's something that I really need. I'm Agnes. I've been diagnosed with dementia for 14 years, dementia of the Alzheimer's type, but it affects my senses so badly, and my walkability is now being affected. And I've been an activist. And why was I an activist? Well, it was by default, because there was nothing in the dark ages but activism. No help for people who were under 60, and I was 57 when I was diagnosed. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Agnes. So James, I met you next at a gathering of so many people working together to improve things for people with dementia. And I was really struck by hearing you speak and the way you have the ability to engage people emotionally. If you have the warmth to engage people to care, it has such a huge impact. And your humour too. I've fallen foul of your kind teasing a few times. Would you like to introduce yourself, James?
Good morning, everybody. I'm James McKillop. As people are fed up hearing me say, I was diagnosed last century, which is a long time in the dementia world. I think I've managed to slow the progress of the illness by being active in the community, not just people with dementia, but anybody at all. So I'm now feeling the effects of 20 years in my health, but I keep going as best I can.
Thank you, James. And Ron, I met you on a ferry. And we had quite an epic road trip to get to know each other. The first piece of work I did with you was on your brilliant play, Caught in This Moment of Time, which was about a year ago now. It's almost a year ago, like last week. We can talk a bit more about that later, but would you like to introduce yourself, Ron? Ron, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm Ron Coleman and I live on the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. As you'll probably discover, I failed my entrance exam to the diplomatic corps, and I'm actually quite a new kid on the block. And my real passion is about creating autonomy, and that's something that everything I live and breathe now is about creating, if you like, that necessary separation and tension between in order for us to move forward.
Thank you, Ron. Well, thank you everyone for telling us a bit more about yourselves, and we'll be taking lots of questions from the audience for you later. But first though, we're going to watch the film, which is about 30 minutes long, where Agnes, James and Ron speak a little bit more in detail about what a good dementia ally looks like in practice.
For someone who's wanting to be a good ally, it's nice that they have the want, but they also have to have some knowledge, and they would gain that knowledge by reading deep guidelines on what it means to be a good coordinator, how you can be a good listener. It's about you assisting people living with dementia to get their wishes met and assisting us rather than leading us. I don't want to be led by the nose. I want to be assisted to drive what I want.
I think we all have different views of what an ally is at the moment. An ally at the moment is probably, for me, would be somebody essentially only is invited to the table. It's not somebody that is at the table necessarily. They would have to be invited. Well-intentioned people at times, really well-intentioned people can come, but they actually don't end up as your allies because they don't actually meet, I think, the vision that's perhaps unfolding or being held at a particular time.
When they are assisting, that they have a clear idea, not only of what assistance means, but what, say it's a meeting, if it's a meeting they're assisting with to get our voices heard, they have a clear idea that they know to give breaks at certain times and to get to know the participants and their needs, so that they're very clear in detail, and keeping it short and simple so that people are not overly tired, but using the help cards, like I want to speak, and giving a safe space, creating a safe space that people, whether they're quiet or whether they're used to being in meetings, that everybody's voices are heard. And that is not as easy as it sounds.
Having a belief that people with dementia can still do things. Obviously, there's things that can no longer do, but they're capable of things, learning new things, even though it's a bit harder. So it's having somebody that believes in you, somebody that will back you on the way, somebody that's a buddy or a mentor. And again, that builds up the confidence, because most people lose their confidence after a diagnosis, and you need somebody to build it up brick by brick until you reach whatever stage you're going to be at.
I think when you get a diagnosis of dementia, you lose, in my opinion, you lose your freedom to be you and your restraint. Whereas being an activist and a campaigner, I felt I was given a license to be free and be Agnes, and that my voice was being heard the first time since my diagnosis of dementia. And today that license to be free is the freedom of choice that everybody has, and you should not be, just because you've got a diagnosis of dementia does not mean that you have to stick with one company of people. You should have a choice and be able to be a member of lots of different groups. And because each group gives different things to you. You can have your campaigning group, and then you can have maybe a group where you've got similar ideas, and you join and you be part of that group. And you can still campaign, but you still need your allies to be able to be a member of every group. And that's why I like the Deep Network, because it consists of many groups and you can join as many as you like. And that is my freedom to be free.
Freedom is wrapped up in some of the thoughts that I guess I have around autonomy and what autonomy means. And I operate the autonomy for me is very much about what I seek to achieve in my life. But it's a rationale that's rooted in my need for autonomy. my need not to have people telling me how to live my life. And that for me is what autonomy is really about. And I think James and Agnes are both brilliant examples of what happens when you, in Agnes' case, get your own personal assistant that works for you.
I was looking for something for a couple of hours yesterday. I didn't find it. What I did find was articles I've written in the past, and one of them I read was when you're diagnosed at that time, you lost your human rights. You weren't free to do this or free to do that. And it was a big step to think, I'm still me, I can still do things, I can still influence people. So being free to, because when I was diagnosed, people wouldn't ask you the time off your watch. They just did to you. So you got the freedom to say what you want. You must be free to express your own opinion without worrying about it upsetting or harming them. I don't mean bad things, but just be choices. Again, I'm going back in time, but people became aware of you that you could talk. People with dementia were never asked to talk because people thought they couldn't do it. So you're asked to meetings, but nobody appreciated the fact that you maybe got up at 5 or 6 in the morning, a cold winter's morning. They didn't appreciate the fact that you'd maybe away from your house 12 or 13 hours, away in the morning, back after midnight. And again, it didn't. Sometimes you'd maybe go to a meeting and they'd list the contributors, and the people with dementia were listed as people with dementia. You weren't given a name. And I found that after meetings, people would just dump you. Once they got you there, you gave your talk. No, you were thrown out the door, left to make your own way home, and no thought we could manage it or not, or the trouble that you've gone to attend to them. And again, this is all for nothing, it's all free. And again, quite often I was at meetings, maybe 30 people, everyone was getting a wage to be there. I was getting nothing. So only recently people started to appreciate it. So it's good to appreciate it. I went someplace and it'll come back to me. And the lady took us to a cafe. She says, I'll have to go do something, but say, order what you want, tea, coffee, cakes, as much as you want. Then after it, she took us for lunch. I mean, that was the best appreciation I ever had. I don't ask for that, usually a cup of coffee and a bun. So that person showed their appreciation, they valued their contribution. Sometimes I felt used like an old dragon tossed aside.
People living with dementia, it's more important that we're hydrated and that we're fed on a regular basis, or we'll get hungry, we'll get confused, and we do not give of our best. And so not only is it being appreciated and being courtesy to offer these things, but as James said, I've been away all day, and I remember one day in particular, and it was for a university, and I was rushed after the thing just about lunchtime, and I travelled a long way. It was in England, and I was put on a train and given, I think it was a mug of cup, one of the cardboard things of soup. And I was trying to hold that, get on the train and what have you. That is not showing appreciation. That was not showing thought before I would get there. And I didn't have the ability to think the whole trip through. I was thinking getting there safe, but I thought there would have been time for lunch and it would have been provided, and then I would have got home. And I never done my homework, but neither did the professionals. And that's when I realised, as James said, that it's very important that not only do they feed back how well we've done when they asked us to do something or not well, but it's also good to allow us to feed back what did not work or what worked well, because how else will they learn?
People want to think at the high level of stuff rather than how do you pick somebody up from a train station? How do I know it's the person that's looking for me? Will they send me a photo? You know, that kind of thing is not what's thought about. It tends to be much more, what do you need when you get there, rather than how are you going to get there. And so I think there's a whole sort of level underneath that high-end stuff that needs to be dealt with to ensure that for the organisers, their event is successful. Because if I arrive totally stressed out, I ain't going to give them my best.
And it was Colin Cunningham from Hammond Care reminded me yesterday that they learned from me to any expenses to have the money and pay it on the day, and let the professionals pick up the hassle of going through universities to get it, or there is hassle putting in forms, waiting in finance and what have you. But we live on a very small budget and we don't handle money very well. So, but it's better to make sure. And I attended Europe a lot in my campaigning, and I lost lots of money because I kept forgetting to put my expenses in.
Welcome somebody, especially the new sort of try and budget them, as I say, is liquid and a drunk tea cake when you arrive. Having somebody near them so they can explain things, because there's terms that we use that these people have never heard before. First of all, again, make sure they get there. I forgot that. That's important. But some people might not travel well, might be unable to use public transport. And to make sure they not only get there, but they get home safely. And again, have leaflets and pamphlets ready to offer them. I don't say give them. Say, look, do you want to read these? I don't want to read them, that's fine. Because too many can be overwhelming.
You make your plans and you prepare what you want to do, but a good facilitator is able to read whoever's round the table and be flexible. Some days it's not as easy because people are having a bad day or they are having different issues, and you need to be able to read. I think a good facilitator will have someone else so that they can say, can you sit beside this person, can you help, so it takes the pressure off when you've got a buddy facilitator. But being flexible and not being too precious of an agenda, keep your agenda small and manageable, because everybody's attention span is different. Everybody's ability to listen and hear and then process an answer and get it out. So pace is very important at these meetings so that people have time to process things and then answer. Plenty of little small breaks. It's good signage so that they can get to the toilet and find their way back. And it's asking the right questions before the meeting. Do you want, when you're going to the toilet in a strange area, do you need someone to assist you getting back? It just it takes the strain off your brain, for want of a better way, A
good facilitator should make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. Because quite often, maybe you say you're talking about buses, and you put your card up, and the facilitators should make a note of who's next to talk. So sometimes you find that before your turn, somebody comes in with a brand new twist, say like talking about aeroplanes, then everybody comes in about aeroplanes, and you're left, and you still want to talk about buses. This has happened a lot, even recently. I've been wanting to contribute, and it hasn't happened, even though I'd put my card up. But people sometimes talk without putting the card up and waiting their turn. Now, I know it's you've got to try and get them quickly, because this is like I'm showing just now. I'm forgetting within seconds. But obviously, a bit impossible to do perfectly. But you do your best, and you try and keep a system whereas people. And I've at meetings, well, as if I chair them, well, I don't do that any longer, but I always make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. And at the end, I used to go around every single person, one by one, to anything you want to ask or say, so round the whole room, so that anybody that wanted to speak would have had a chance.
We can be emotional, and our emotions can be quite vulnerable. And quite a few times, because I haven't been given a chance to speak, and have changed, maybe the subject matter has changed a wee bit, and what have you. And I felt a hurt, and then an anger, and then I have to talk myself out of it and say, that wasn't personal and wasn't meant. And I think a good facilitator, if they're aware of that, we can head it off at the pass by doing as James said, and say, you know, if you didn't get a chance to speak, leave a comment in the chat box or speak to us later, so that you can talk your emotions through, and it's not left to linger and fester, and then you say, I'm not going on that meeting never again. You know, so that is another thing that we can be aware of. But it's not all about good facilitators. I think too there's something about people who want to participate in meetings, etc., being aware of a lot of things too, because it is a new, for a lot of people, I know for me, I'd never been at meetings like this before, and it's just different. And the terminology that people can use is like another language to you, you know. So it's not only the facilitators to be aware of it, but almost something like having a conversation before the meeting to make the person who's going for the first time to be aware that these things can happen. And I think James is right, a buddy or a mentor or someone who can just keep a gentle eye on you and whisper in your ear, did you understand that? Acronyms are a no-no, you know, and they're constantly using them. So yeah, there's lots of different things, but above all, I think a good facilitator, an ally, it's good to be compassionate and kind to yourself as well as others. We won't get it all right, and like life, we never get it all right, and it's just seeing that and just trying the best you can. That's all we can hope for. The honest sharing and telling us what worked and what didn't work. That's why I like the follow-up, and not many people do follow-ups. You know, how was that for you, especially if it's your first meeting and what have you, you know. So yeah.
I've got three things there. I hope I can remember them. One is, when I was chairing meetings, I would say, I would all finish in that subject, and that gave MD that was waiting to talk about that subject to do it before he moved on. Another thing that Agnes was involved in this, we did in this Scottish Network Group, we spent months preparing a welcome pack, you know, explaining lots of things to people. You know, as Agnes said, acronyms and other things. And another thing we used to do is go and visit the person before they came to the meeting. Yeah. If they didn't want to visit, that's fine. But if they wanted to visit, at least when they came, they knew a friendly face and they could ask their questions beforehand. So I think that was important, to make contact so they don't come in to a strange meeting so people don't know. I just remember something else. It fills me with pride and it makes me feel good when I think about it. That when we used to go up to Aberdeen, there used to be about 60 people around a lot of tables there. And Agnes was at the door greeting every single person, a great big smile, a big hug. And I thought that was terrific, being met as if you were a valued customer.
And that was one of the hardest jobs for me, was to meet people, remember their names and that. But I took pride in being given that job.
Researchers should stop writing papers in their name and acknowledge that often in research they are scribes. They are not the authors. Because what happens is they become authors of my words, or authors of Nancy, or authors of James, rather than learning from us. I think we need to work in partnership with research, where we're seen as co-authors of papers. Then maybe we can go somewhere with what research is.
One of the dangers in the Scottish Dementia Working Group a way back was to your health, because you laughed so much, you came out with sore ribs. It was great. We didn't set it aside, but during the meeting there was always wisecracks and jokes, and as I said, you come out with ribs sore, you laughed that much.
I've found that everybody has a different sense of humour. And everybody's type of fun is different. That's what makes us all so unique, right? But I like to be able to choose what meetings I go that suits me. So it's like going to the movies or going to the theatre. Not everybody chooses the same play or the same whatever music, because we've all got different tastes. But it's good to be able to choose the type of humour and the type of fun things that you want to join.
And you got to watch about being available but not too available. But maybe an email is better than a phone call, because you could be middle of something, like eating your dinner, you wanted to get cold.
And I think James reminded me of something, and I think it's gone from my brain too, is that being very clear and getting your boundaries set, like if you work, or not work, but if you can volunteer or be an ally, but you've got another job, you've got family, you've got other things, being very clear that I'm available on Monday morning, I do not take phone calls or emails after 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock if your kids are coming in from school. But just setting your boundaries, that's okay, because I think people with dementia like to know where they stand.
The facilitator really needs to be agendaless. I think in Loud and Clear, I refer to that as doism. When we take control, it's about doism, and and sometimes you have to be really quite, in my head, quite hard about that position. And again, that can get seen as difficult by other people.
I just think, for me, I couldn't function without having good allies and good facilitators and people that can assist me to continue doing what I'm doing.
Hello. So thank you everybody for making that film. It was really informative, and I've got lots of questions in my mind, but we're having some questions coming through already. We've got a couple of questions which were given to us in advance, and I've got about 4 or 5 questions that have started coming through already. So please feel welcome to put your questions in the chat, and I'll put these to the panel right away. So some of these questions are on a sort of similar line. Question from Frankie. I wonder how we can be a better ally on Zoom when we might not be physically next to you to ask if you're understanding or if you're needing anything. So this is relating to sort of using Zoom. Does anybody have a thought on that? Agnes?
Hi, now I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think there's some deep guidance on about Zoom in particular, and I know that the Dementia Alliance International have been using Zoom. For those that don't know that, that's an international group of people living with dementia, and they've been using Zoom for 7 years, and they taught me to use Zoom. And so I think it's clear asking. You know, for me though, using Zoom, what I've picked up over the years is, don't see it as so different. Your space is digital, but it has to be a safe space, and people have to feel comfortable. So it's setting your guidance up. You know, is there too much noise? Let's all mute. So a good facilitator would have all these guidance set in front of them before the meeting is started. So they're setting a safe space for everyone, you know. So that's some of the things that I had heard. I've been using Zoom all the time during lockdown, but you do get what is it, sensitivity, information overload, and it has another type of tiredness. And to be a good facilitator, it's been able to be aware of that and to give guidance to people who have vision and hearing problems, etc. You know, and I think we need to talk about it more. And if anything comes up, and I know I've got lots of ideas, I'm willing to chat to someone or send an email with some of my ideas, you know, after that. I want to give space for James and Ron to talk.
Thank you, Agnes. Do you have thoughts on that, James, about Zoom? I'm not hearing you, James. How about you, Ron?
I use Zoom all the time, so me, it's just a normal part of working. I think sometimes, I don't know what it is, but I often feel that we talk a language of strengths and then act actions of deficits, and we don't focus enough on what the real strengths that people have and people with dementia have. So, for example, you know, I'll leave it there because I'm sure other things will come up.
Yeah, Ron, I'll listen to what you're...
James,
sorry.
oh, sorry.
Is James frozen?
Sorry, James. Yeah. Can you unmute yourself, James, so we can hear you?
Well, I'm trying to unmute James, but it's not working, so I'll keep trying.
Okay. I'll come back to you, James, okay? I'll go to Agnes now.
I was trying to follow up with Ron, but I was worried about James there, and I think I've lost the plot. But I think for the facilitators is, don't be afraid of this medium. As Ron says, we people with dementia, we've embraced it, and it's just like life for us. Life is difficult for us. Going out to the shops has challenges, and we have to have workarounds. So Zoom was no different. So we just done workarounds. And when something didn't happen, after the meeting, I would maybe say to Ron, I had difficulty with that. And he talked me over my difficulty, you know, so, and it's baby steps. So working together to achieve the best outcome is how I see it. And just because you're a facilitator, and Paula is marvellous at it, she laughs and jokes, and we just work together, and we never ever we just see each other as pals trying to get the best outcome, rather than a facilitator and people living with dementia. We're just people together, you know. And
it's
true. Don't touch that, you do use the mouse.
You know, so I'm absolutely, I have to say, I'm loving this new medium. And it was great. And I'm going to bring this bit of, I was quietly chuffed, Ron, that I saw people really great at facilitating meetings, etc., struggling and absolutely making a mess up of Zoom. And I was quietly and saying, God, I know people with dementia that can run rings around you, you know. So, yeah.
It's true. Thank you, Agnes. James, we were talking about Zoom. Do you have anything to say about that? Frankie's question, I'll repeat that to you. I wonder how we can be a better ally on Zoom when we might not be physically next to you to ask if you're understanding or if you're reading and needing anything.
Well, first of all, apologies that I couldn't unmute. I couldn't remember how to do it, and I was able.
You're here now.
You can hear me now.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know on the screen that if I move my head, it takes about 4 or 5 seconds before I see it registering. Anyway, as regards Zoom, I'm a great believer in having a trial run, you know, beforehand. I mean, as Agnes said, there's various help articles out there, and I think if you have a trial run, it should iron out difficulties and be prepared to listen to what everybody's saying if they're having difficulties. You might say press a certain button or that. It might not mean anything to me.
Okay, thank you, James. Louise had a question for everyone, which is quite along these lines. She's asked, how has the role of the LA changed during lockdown?
Well,
Anyone like to come in on that?
Yes, I'll come in.
Okay, James.
Life has changed. That I find it hard to get a day off now. It's as if I'm working full time with the Zooms. Apart from being on a Zoom meeting, there's a lot of work emanates from it. And say like this last night, I was on from 10 till half past midnight this morning to finish an article. Oh dear. I forget what I'm talking about.
No, it is a long day, James. Zoom fatigue is a thing, isn't it?
So some days I've got 3 Zoom meetings and I can't go anywhere because I've got to be back. I mean, I like a wee run down to the coast, which is about 30 miles away. And it's, for once it's shining, the sun's shining here in Scotland. I just can't go because I've got meetings later.
Oh, bless you.
Restricting me. And where sometimes you had a meeting, say, every 2 months, now you're finding they're coming every week. I mean, obviously, you're not obliged to enter everyone, but it can really eat into your personal timetable.
Thank you, James. Ron, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I think one of the things lockdown has shown is that we have far greater resilience than people assumed we had. You know, because people have not been coming to the house. People haven't been engaging with us. To us, isolation is a normal state. It's not abnormal. For us, the real question I think that we need to start addressing is, what is an ally? You know, we were talking earlier, Agnes and myself, about our experience of, I call it at the moment we have this thing called the rule of 6 going on. I'd like to see us discussing dementia, the rule of 100. And the 100 being, when you look at 100 people with dementia, what do you see? Right? Because researchers quite often see research subjects. That's fine. The system, and I'm talking about the statutory sector, tends to see risk assessments, paper assessment, needs assessments, client numbers, a whole host of stuff that I wouldn't class as being allies. What I see when I look at a room of 100 people with dementia is 6,000 years of experience. That's what I see. And that is lost in a deficit-based system, where it's all looking about our needs and how poor we are. We have people that think that we are living with a terminal illness. I'm sorry, but life is terminal. You know, it's no terminal illness. Dying is part of living. And it's about time we started. And we have that discussion as people with dementia, and yet other people are frightened to have it with us, as if it's going to be too much. And that lockdown has taught me one thing, and that is we are really a resilient people, and we can do this. And one of the best things for me an ally can do is probably at times leave the room and let us get on with it. And I know that sounds hard, but look at the women's movement. Look at the black civil rights movement. Look at Gandhi. Look at Nelson Mandela. They didn't get what they wanted by sitting in rooms. Women didn't get it by sitting in rooms with men. They got independence by being women and fighting. Black people got their civil liberties by fighting for themselves. And we'll only get what we want in terms of a humanitarian system by fighting for what we want, not what you want. And that, that to me is an ally.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm just conscious that Agnes' card's up, Ron. Thank you. Agnes?
Could you remind me what the question was? I've got something written down here and I'm wondering if it's appropriate.
This is Louise's question, going on sort of along the same lines as Frankie's. She was asking how the role of the ally has changed during lockdown.
The role of the ally? Well, I don't really know, because as Ron said, I've been isolated for 6 months and more. So I haven't really got allies coming into my house. I'm not really sure. Most of the time I felt quite isolated, and I've only just recently realised that I have to put my hand out. People won't come in to see me, and James has been great at phoning me up when I was ill and making sure that, and in fact there was one time he wasn't in total lockdown and he offered to get 2 buses and come and make me a wee bowl of soup because he was worried about me eating. Now that has been a kind, gentle human being. Is it an ally? Of course it's an ally, you know, a pal, a friend, you know, that kind of thing. So I think what I would have liked to have seen is the people that I'd done a lot of work for, and I know Paula, you were one. I mean, it was great. I got a lovely, because I was very stressed out with Zoom, and I got a lovely wee care package with a spray to help me spray to de-stress after all these meetings. And I think I used a third of the bottle on Tuesday when we done our last one. But anyway, these are what makes people good coordinators and allies. They are prepared to go the extra mile and keep in touch and make sure people are not feeling alone when they are isolated. And it's not just about work, it's about connecting and making human connections, so that there's a depth to us. Like Paula and I, we've got to know one another. You got to know Ron on the ferry. I've got to know Jane. There's a depth to our relationship and being a colleague and being an ally and what have you, you know. And that takes effort on both sides, you know. I know James wants to talk, and I want him to remember his question, whatever he wanted to say.
James, the question from Louise was, how has the role of ally changed during lockdown? Did you have something to say on that?
Well, I was going to reply to Ron about the death. When I was diagnosed, you were given 6 years to live, and I saw that in writing and up in meetings, and then you started to think, you have dementia a while before you're actually diagnosed. So that diagnosis, how long have you got? You know, what you should do is run off and make your funeral arrangements. And I felt as an ally, I don't know if you know Life Changes Trust, Paula, but every person there emailed me to see how I was getting on. So I felt they were there in spirit, if not in body, they were there in spirit, encouraging me to keep going. Because at times, because of other health problems, I can get a wee bit down. And it's amazing how they can lift you up.
That's brilliant. Thank you, James. Shall I go on to the next question, which is kind of relevant? Fiona wanted to ask, over the years, how have the speakers adapted to the growing importance of social media as a tool for campaigning? And I know it's been extra important during this kind of lockdown and shielding situation, but Fiona's question is about social media as a tool for campaigning. So maybe Agnes, you could answer this because, or start with the answer for this, because I know that you're very active on Twitter.
Yes, I feel that social media has been my best pal, and it's been for quite a while, because it's always there. There's someone there all over the world, and I had difficulty sleeping, etc., etc. And I like Twitter because you keep it short and to the point. So there's a thread and a conversation go on, and you can ask a question and then you get a reply and then someone joins in, and I use it a lot, and I've never had a problem with it, although I know others have, about bullying on social media and that. But you see, I just ignore people and just think, oh, I don't like their tone. Oh, I don't like that. And I don't even finish reading it and I move on. You know, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's been shallow, I don't know. I'm just looking after my own mental health, I don't know. But yes, and you know, I want to say this, I think it's very important that people know. I didn't know about Twitter. I didn't even know how to do it. And it was at a digital conference, an IT conference, and I was asked to speak. And because I used my iPad and various things and how I used it, and I was talking about that. And at the break, I think it was the 11th, it was a person living with dementia. Sadly, he's died, and I can't remember his name just off the cuff at the moment. And he got a napkin when I said, "What do you mean? Tweeting, that's an awful strange word, you know." And he got a napkin and he said, "Right, Agnes, see that? Kid, see that is like a pen." and that is your paper, and you're only allowed that short wee bit of paper to put what you want to say in. So keep it short and simple, and you do this and this, and that was me on tweeting, you know. And I'll you know, Brian Maloney's name was, and I owe him such a debt of gratitude.
Thank you, Agnes. Ron, maybe you could pick up on there a little bit, because I know you use all kinds of media, and you might even want to talk about expanding that technology a little bit, expanding the question into the technology that you've been using to assist you. But do you use social media and technology as your ally?
Yeah, I'm more about using technology in the house. And again, it's part of my autonomy. So my latest toy, and I call them toys, is I found this app that allows me to receive emails, and it will translate the email from text to voice. So I actually hear the emails that people are sending me, because physically my eyes are going, I can't see. And so that allows me to see. It also allows me to continue to write, because alongside that, I use another piece of technology that translates my voice into text. And so I marry both those technologies to suit me. I also, just before we finish this meeting, will probably say, Alexa, turn on plug 1, which means my kettle will start boiling. And I'll then go and make myself a cup of tea. I don't need to go and put the kettle on and wait for it to boil. I can do that from here.
So Alexa's your ally?
Alexa's my biggest ally. And I'll tell you the great thing about Alexa for me is there's no judgment with Alexa.
That's right.
She doesn't make judgments. She acts as the ultimate ally. She accepts my moods. She accepts who I am unconditionally. And she learns about me. If I ask my Alexa now who's speaking, she will tell you it's me. And if Karen asks her that, she'll say, I don't know, you're using Ron's Alexa. So for me, technology is an ally. And working with the people that develop technology is about creating new alliances. I'm half an hour, well, you know where I live, Paula. I'm half an hour from the nearest civilization. And that's by car, and that's with my wife driving, and she's fast. So getting a bus in would take me an hour. A worker coming to see me has to spend at least 45 minutes driving each way. That's an hour and a half. Right?
Sorry, Ron, can I go to...
But just finish, Paula. For a lot cheaper, over the long term, I can use Alexa or technology for the bulk of my needs. And people say you miss the human touch. No, we don't. No, when the human touch consists of somebody coming in for 10 minutes because that's all they've got allocated and having to rush off again. So I think there's a lot of stuff that are the myths of care. And it's time, you know, people are beginning to spend far too much time caring for us and not enough time caring about us. That's what an ally does. They care about us, not for us.
Thank you, Ron. That's very powerful. Thank you. James, now going back to this social media question, I know I've not really seen you use social media very much, but I know that you use email as quite a powerful tool.
Yes, I'm on the email several times a day. Sometimes it can take hours, but I'd like to go back to social media. On the 6th of June 2001, I was at an Alzheimer's conference and people were talking about sufferers, demented people, people suffering from dementia, and that included a government minister at the time. So on the 10th of June 2001, I wrote an article about demeaning terms like that. And over the years, every time I saw it in a newspaper, I wrote to them complaining. And for 19 years, I never got one reply. I only got one, and that was earlier this year, and that was the Glasgow Herald. I was completely ignored, and they still use these hurtful terms, sufferers. I haven't been able to buy newspapers recently, but so I haven't seen anything for 6 months. But I saw it every few weeks or so, and I think that's got a big impact on us. People read it, they're impressed, and they call us dementia sufferers. Yeah. Now, to be truthful, I called them that as well, but I didn't know any better.
Thank you, James. Agnes?
It's in response to Ron. I feel a campaign coming on, Ron, on changing the government's attitude, especially the self-directed support, and you being able to use your budget to get someone who is efficient for using Alexa and setting it up as if it's a human being, as the same way, you know, vet it, what are your needs, how can we get Alexa, can Alexa do it, etc. And Ron, I think you and I need to put our heads together, find funding and get this sorted out, because, and the reason why I'm saying that is, I got Alexa for my 70th birthday, and I didn't realise, someone said, you just plug it in and it works. No, it didn't, right? So I was parcelling it up and sending it back, and I was at a conference. So my Alexa went somewhere and someone tried to fix it. Then Alistair came to my house and he was doing it. And then it went up to Stornoway with Ron. And Ron at least got Alexa back to telling me what the weather is and various things like that. But I need Alexa to do more than that. Yeah. And that, I feel a campaign coming on. Sorry, I know I've changed the subject. And that is showing you how difficult it is to keep people with dementia on the agenda, trying to be a good ally. And Paula does it. She's very flexible. She smiles, lets us get on with it, and then we move on.
We're witnessing history here, Agnes. This is history in the making. I've got another question for everybody. This question is from Dave. Often the projects I'm involved in have a lot going on. I'd like people to be involved in everything. Are there any other tips on how organisers can value people's presence and make the most of their time attending a meeting without overwhelming them? Do you want me to repeat that? It was quite an... Shall I repeat it, Agnes, or are you okay?
Okay. No, I'm going to answer whatever comes into my head. Okay. Hi, David. I think what I wanted to say is, I've been at a lot of the Connected Neighbourhood meetings. You do very well at them. Keeping it simple. You know, yeah, you want to get through a lot, but the professionals could wheedle it down and say what is important, what is the important matters, and let's deal with that. And using different mediums to hear the voices. Sometimes, and Ron mentioned this one time, it's how you put the question so that the person will engage, you know. Plant allies next to people who have difficulty talking, another person with dementia who has got maybe the wisdom or the understanding or the skill even or whatever, so that they can chin wag and hear that voice. the quiet voice, and that, you know, that's enough from me. I'm sure James and Ron will have other things to add on.
Could you repeat the question, please, Paula?
Yes, of course, James. Dave has asked that the projects he is involved in have a lot going on, and he'd like to involve everyone in everything. But are there any tips on how organisers can value people's presence and make the most of their time attending a meeting, but without overwhelming them?
Yeah, that encompasses an awful lot of things. It's important to do your homework and prepare for the person coming.
Your sound's quite quiet, James. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's it.
I find it hard to hear you as well.
Mm-hmm.
But will I start again?
Yes, please, James.
Well, as I said, it's important that you do your homework to make sure everything is suitable for the person coming. And that could mean, say, arranging trains, because sometimes we travel hundreds of miles, and making sure there's somebody to greet them on arrival, because you can get to a strange place and you don't know where to go, what exit. I was in Berlin once and there were 7 exits, and we took the one we thought was the right one. So we turned left and walked for half an hour. We were in a completely wrong direction. So it's important to meet people. And again, when you get them to the place, go in the toilets, get them some liquid, a biscuit, Turnips tea cake goes down well with me. And then make sure there's somebody delegated to look after them while they're there, to show them things like toilets, and even to stay with them to take them to the toilet. Now, that might sound strange, but quite often I've been at meetings and at tea time, I thought, I'll go to the toilet. I never reach it because people keep stopping you and talking to you because they're interested in what you're saying. The same at lunchtime. You've got to cover your head to go and get a lunch. And also when it's all over, make sure they get escorted back to the railway station or the airport. You know, treat them as you treat your mother, and then you can't go wrong.
So any more on that one before I ask the last question? We've got one more question. Yes, Agnes?
Yeah, sorry. Ron, do you want to go next?
Oh, go ahead.
All right. And I wanted to add that, especially at meetings, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's, you know, in a wee facility or something like that, it's people who come to these things, sometimes they actually don't want to be there, and it's just a place to go. You know, someone drags you along, you know, and you're sitting there and you're kind of lost. And other people are there because they have interests. So you might have 4 things on the agenda, but they're only really interested in one thing, which might be the local buses or something like that, whatever your thing is, and they've got a lot to say on that. So they get agitated and maybe be disruptive or whatever because they're agitated and they talk about other things and that. And again, it is a good chair will know that, and they'll have people and you can just nod to them, and then you can go and distract the person, you know, maybe take them for a wee walk and say to them, how are you finding the meeting? How is it? Is it too noisy? Do you want a cup of tea? Things like that. And so there's more to chairing a meeting than facilitating the agenda. And James taught me a lot of things. There's a lot of preparation goes behind the scenes. And the meetings that look seamless are the ones where people have worked damned hard to make it seamless. And the last thing I wanted to say is, after a meeting, ask people how they would like, and quickly send a bullet point of what the outcomes have been, especially if Agnes or someone like Agnes puts their hands up and said they'll do an action. You know, keep on the ball, keep your fingers on the ball, on the pulse, and keep us, you know, interested, you know. But I'm sure, David, you knew all of this. Ron, I hope you haven't forgotten, because I think I went on a wee bit longer than I intended to.
Ron?
That's brilliant, Agnes, because I'd forgotten before you even started, so it didn't. Well, I think for me, it's about a lot of services, unfortunately, are based on what people think we want. Now, I know people that go to day services and hate it.
Yeah.
But they're almost told to go.
Mm.
And it's based on asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
It's based on somebody thinking this is what you need, rather than saying very simply, what do you need? What do you want? What do you really want to do? And so I think it's important that we have an opportunity because of lockdown, and I don't think we're near finished with it yet. I think
neither do I.
we'll be into this until the middle of next year. This is an opportunity to change. This is an opportunity to change everything or do nothing. And I think that's a choice. And I think it's a hard choice. And I think it's a choice that we're making as people with dementia. And my challenge and our challenge, because I know because we all talk to each other a lot, is why do you not come on to our choices for a wee while and see what you really think or the choices we want to make? Because we talk about living well with dementia. We've even set up a recovery college, which is not about recovering from dementia. It's about recovering our lives and living a life that we want. Now that's done in co-production, but the leadership of that co-production is people with dementia. That's it. I mean, you wouldn't let any other group have their lives controlled in the way ours are. You know, so it's time for change, and you can make that change. And David, yeah, that's about looking at the whole service, but not looking at it yourself. Getting your service users and saying, here's a blank piece of paper, create the service, use the 360 years experience that the 60 years have, and create something. 6,000 years, 100 people. That's longer than we've been civilized, a lot longer. So there is something there for us.
Thank you. Agnes?
You know, Ron, we do have a lot of dialogue. Sometimes it can be quite heated because we're both strong personalities, and sometimes we have to agree, to disagree, or take a pause and come back to it when we've got, calmed down a bit. And I love that about our honesty and our dialogue. But what I wanted to say, Ron, was to get my needs met, I had a fight on my hands and have had for years. And I'm very tired of fighting. And then I realised that I don't need to fight alone. My daughter became ill, and then all sorts of things happened to us. And I found advocacy. And I got an advocate worker to come and listen to my tales of woe and what was working and wasn't working. And then they came to meetings, and instead of me doing the fight, this person spoke up. And that would sound strange to a lot of people who know me. Speaking up for Agnes, God, she can speak up for herself. But I couldn't, because they weren't hearing me, and they were battering me down and saying, oh, but you can't have that. Oh, that's not allowed. Oh, this isn't for you, And I had to fit into their boxes when it wasn't suitable for me. And that advocacy worker was the best thing, and that was a year ago. And they go on self-directed support meetings with me. I wish I knew about advocacy worker, but I thought I was a strong enough personality and didn't require that. So yes, so I've learned a lot about Agnes during this, being in a bubble of safety and not saying anything. I found what my strengths are and my weaknesses are. And some of the things that I thought was a strength was actually a weakness, which was not asking for help. You don't have to do this on alone. There's lots of allies out there, and I know lots of people, and just ask for advice and ask for help. And Ron, you're one of my biggest allies, and I'll be asking and picking your brain forevermore.
Agnes, that's a strong point to finish on, Agnes. Is that your message, that, you know, ask for help, ask for allies to come to help you? James, do you have a final message?
Yes.
For everyone?
What I find on my screen, it takes about 10 seconds for any movement. So I've held up my card and it hasn't registered. But going back to Ron's great point about the 6,000 years experience, there's a lot of us with dementia have written books and articles. And say, for example, I've got one about communicating with people with dementia, and driving, a driving booklet. So I just wish there was somewhere where these could go, like a library, so that people coming after us can refer to them and add their own.
Okay.
If David wants a copy of my communication, I can send it by email if he communicates his email.
Thank you, James. Ron, how about your final words for everybody before we talk about your Alexa events tomorrow?
I think it's, I agree with Agnes on this. I think the biggest thing for me is it's about our choice. I think too often people are imposed on us, and we're not given the choice. And autonomy is about making choices, not other people making them for us. I use advocacy, but I choose who advocates for me. That's right. And because that for me is what an advocate is. And I think allies have to, if we start at the very beginning, the first thing an ally has to do is earn our trust.
That was the question that I didn't get to, Ron. Rosie asked a question about earning trust, so maybe that's something we can pick up on next. But I just wanted to draw this to a close by letting everybody know about Alexa and me peer-to-peer resources coming out tomorrow. And there's the world premiere of the radio play. You did we actually held the premiere at Atlanta last year of the physical play on stage, but the radio play is coming out tomorrow, so that's going to be an exciting day for you. But I just want to thank everybody for today's session, and to Philly for producing the film, and thank you to everyone who's registered and taken part in the discussion today. And the recording from the session will feature on the Life Changes Trust website over in a few days' time. So I just really wanted to thank everybody, the panel, all of the Life Changes Trust team for making this happen, everybody for coming along, and for your brilliant questions. So yes, I've just been asked there if there's a link to the radio programme. That will be on the Life Changes Trust website, and it will be shared on social media as well. Okay, so thank you, everybody.
Can I just say, Paula, take a bow. Well facilitated, great ally, lovely smile. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care, all of you.